Young alien warrior laughed at the human's armor, then froze when he removed it. Its stone walls gleamed under the fading light, polished and etched with the marks of countless battles. This arena was not merely a place of training. It was where young warriors proved their worth, where strength, speed, and skill were celebrated, and where legends were born. Among the gathered crowd of alien spectators, the youngest warriors of the Zithar species strutted and flexed their muscles. Their armor shimmered in vibrant colors, intricate patterns carved into every plate. Each design spoke of personal victories, of skill, of pride. And at the center of their attention stood the most boastful of them all, Kale, a young alien warrior with sharp emerald eyes and armor polished to a mirror finish. He was tall, muscular, and brimming with confidence. Kale had been trained from birth to believe his species was the strongest in the galaxy. Today, however, something unusual happened. A delegation from Earth had arrived, sending one human to demonstrate their species' abilities. He was different from the elegant, flamboyant aliens Kale was used to seeing. His armor was plain, heavy gray plates without any decoration, no etchings, no symbols of victory. It looked functional, solid, but simple. Kale laughed. It started as a quiet chuckle, then grew into a loud, sharp sound that echoed across the arena. "What is this?" he sneered, spinning his spear between his hands. "This is the armor of a child. Is this human pride?" The spectators, a mix of aliens and other humans in observation pods, exchanged curious glances. Some chuckled nervously, unsure if Kale was serious or joking. Other young warriors joined in, mocking the human openly. The human remained still. He did not smile or react. He simply stood, calm and composed, his posture straight, his eyes observing everything around him. He did not need words to command attention. His presence alone made the arena quiet, even in the face of laughter. Kale stepped closer, towering over the human, flexing his arms, showing off every movement as though it could intimidate. "Are you really going to enter the arena like that? You cannot even match our elegance or style. You will fail before you even begin." The human looked at Kale for a long moment. His eyes were steady, unshaken. Then he nodded slightly, as if agreeing to the challenge. "I do not need style," he said in a voice clear and calm. "Strength is shown in action, not in appearance," the crowd murmured. Some were surprised by his words. Others leaned forward, curious to see what would happen next. Kale's grin widened. "Words," he said. "You will need more than words to survive here." The announcer, a tall alien with golden scales and 4 arms, raised his voice to silence the whispers. "Let the demonstration begin," his voice echoed, bouncing off the stone walls. "No weapons unless requested. Only strength, skill, and control are allowed. Observe, for these are the future defenders of their species." Kale immediately took center stage, his confidence radiating like heat. He lifted a massive boulder with ease, holding it above his head while flexing every muscle. The spectators cheered. He slammed it down onto the stone floor, causing cracks to spiderweb outward. Next, he moved to a set of mechanical dummies, striking them with precise, fast blows. Each hit sent sparks flying, and the dummies toppled in a controlled chaos. Kale moved with speed and grace, his training obvious. When it was the human's turn, the arena grew tense. All eyes watched as he stepped forward, the weight of his plain armor making him seem slower at first glance. He lifted a smaller boulder with both hands, then another larger one. He did not flex or show off. He did not make a sound, yet every boulder he lifted rose as if it weighed nothing, held steady in the air with complete control. Kale's eyes narrowed. He could not understand it. The human had no flashy moves, no elegant spins, no display of power. And yet he lifted the same weight Kale had struggled with before. The spectators leaned closer, sensing something unusual. The human moved to the mechanical dummies. Each strike was calculated, precise, and unhurried. He toppled them with minimal effort, correcting them if they did not fall properly. His movements were controlled, almost effortless. The arena, which had been alive with laughter and noise just moments ago, now fell quiet. Kale's grin began to falter. He flexed his arms harder as if forcing strength into them could still prove his superiority. "This is impossible," he muttered under his breath. "No human could be this strong." Kale's pride burned. He decided to take a step further. "Armor," he shouted. "Your armor must be helping you. Remove it. Let us see what you truly are." The human paused, looking down at his plain gray plates. He nodded. Slowly, carefully, he began to unfasten the sections. First the gauntlets came off, then the chest plate, then the heavy boots. Each piece clinked softly on the ground. The audience held its breath. Kale's laughter was gone. He stepped back, his emerald eyes wide as the human's body was revealed. Without the armor, the human seemed smaller at first, but then the effect of gravity and his movement became clear. Every step he took seemed to carry more power than it should. Every motion was precise, controlled, and impossibly fast. The human bent down and lifted a massive stone slab, something even Kale could barely budge. He held it above his head for several seconds without strain, his face calm and focused. The young warrior's jaw dropped. How could this be possible? The audience was frozen in awe. The elders watching from the observation pods leaned forward, whispering among themselves. The human's strength was not just physical. It was discipline, control, and a mastery of motion that no alien warrior had yet seen. Kale's mind raced. He had been taught that humans were weaker, slower, fragile. He had mocked this human without thought, confident in his superiority. Now he felt something unfamiliar, fear, not of defeat but of being shown the limits of his own understanding. The human did not move to attack. He did not need to, he simply demonstrated calmly that he could do what no alien could. His eyes, calm and focused, met Kale's. No arrogance, no mockery, just controlled power. Kale's chest heaved, and for the first time he felt the weight of humility. Laughter had left him. The young alien warrior realized that strength was more than muscle, more than style, more than flashy armor. It was patience, discipline, and understanding one's own limits. The crowd began to whisper, then murmur, then cheer, not for the young alien, but for the human who had entered the arena with nothing but quiet confidence. Some warriors lowered their heads, some sat in stunned silence, and others simply could not believe what they were witnessing. Kale stepped back, his spear trembling slightly in his hands. He did not know what to say. The human's demonstration was complete, and yet there had been no fight, no aggression, no attempt to dominate. The human had shown that real power did not need to be proved by destruction. It existed quietly, confidently, and it demanded respect. The announcer, sensing the moment, raised his 4 arms and called out, "Observe all of Scythera Prime. Strength is not only in muscle, but in control. Let this be a lesson to all warriors, young and old. Even the smallest, simplest armor cannot hide what lies within." Kale looked around at the crowd. Their whispers were no longer mocking, but filled with awe. Even his fellow young warriors had stopped laughing. The arena, once filled with confident noise, now held a strange, respectful silence. The human retrieved his armor and fastened it back in place, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Kale could barely look at him. This encounter had shaken his pride, his beliefs, and his understanding of the universe. That night, Kale could not sleep. He replayed every moment in his mind, every lift, every controlled strike, every calm motion. He had laughed at a human, sure of his superiority, and yet that human had shown him a truth he could not ignore. Strength was not just what one wore or how one moved. It was how one trained, how one controlled, and how one respected one's own power. Far away, the human sat quietly in his quarters, meditating. He thought of nothing except discipline, practice, and patience. For him, today had been just another test, another day of showing what humans could do when trained and restrained. Yet he knew that what he had done would be remembered, not for battle, but for showing that humanity's quiet strength could command attention anywhere in the galaxy. And somewhere deep in the training halls of Scythera Prime, a young alien warrior named Kale began to understand that the universe was far bigger, stronger, and more surprising than he had ever imagined. He had laughed, but now he knew that sometimes laughter was the first step toward learning, and the first step toward respect. The morning sun rose over Scythera Prime, painting the sky in pale gold and soft pink. The training arena was quiet now, empty of the previous day's crowd, but Kale could still feel the weight of what had happened. The memory of the human's calm, controlled strength haunted him. Every step, every movement had seemed effortless yet far stronger than any aliens in the arena. Kale could not shake it from his mind. He walked among the scattered boulders and toppled dummies, his spear dragging lightly against the stone floor. His pride had been bruised, but he refused to admit it openly. Other young warriors whispered among themselves, glancing at him with curiosity and a little awe. Kale knew they were talking about the human. None of them had ever seen strength like that, not in training, not in combat simulations. "Kale," a voice called softly. It was Lyra, a fellow young warrior and his closest friend. Her armor was less flashy than his, but her movements were precise, trained. "You look troubled." "Are you thinking about him?" Kale's emerald eyes flicked to her. "Yes," he admitted, lowering his voice. "I cannot forget it. That human, he moves differently. He lifts differently. It is not the armor, not the skill of the hands. It is something else. Something I do not understand." Lyra studied him carefully. "Perhaps it is not just strength. Perhaps it is patience, discipline, or something humans call control. They train differently than we do." Kale shook his head, frustration and disbelief crossing his features. "Control. Discipline. I have trained my whole life to be the best warrior. I thought I knew strength, but today I learned I know nothing." Lyra placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then learn, Kale. Humans are different, yes, but we can study, watch, and grow. Perhaps we will see something useful if we observe him more closely." Kale's jaw tightened. He hated the idea of looking weak in front of others, yet he could not ignore the human's display. He decided then and there that he would learn, not through mockery, not through pride, but through careful observation. The arena gates opened, and the human stepped inside once again. This time he did not wear the armor that had restrained him the previous day. Instead, he moved with freedom, his plain training uniform allowing full motion. The sunlight caught on his skin and muscles, highlighting the incredible control of his body. Kale's eyes widened. The human seemed lighter, faster, yet still impossibly strong. The young warrior's pride fought against his fascination. "He looks normal," Kale muttered, "but everything he does proves I am not enough." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Today you will witness a demonstration of strength, skill, and control. No weapons. No tricks, only ability. Observe carefully, young warriors, for this is a rare opportunity." Kale stepped forward, determined not to appear afraid. He flexed, lifted weights, and ran through a series of exercises. Yet no matter how much he pushed, he could feel the human's presence dominating the arena. The human did not lift weights immediately. He stood still, focusing, controlling his breathing. Then, almost casually, he picked up the same massive boulders Kale had lifted yesterday. Each one rose as if it weighed nothing. The young warriors gasped. Kale felt a sharp twist of fear in his chest. How could someone so calm be so strong? How could a human, wearing no special armor, achieve feats impossible for a Zithar trained since birth? The human moved next to the training dummies. With controlled precision, he struck, kicked, and moved them in exact formations. No dummy fell incorrectly. No movement was wasted. Every action demonstrated power without aggression, control without effort. The arena seemed to slow around him, as if his discipline created a field of calm, and everyone watching could not help but notice. Kale's hands tightened around his spear. He wanted to challenge the human to prove he was still superior. But something inside him told him it would be useless. The human did not fight for pride or recognition. He fought for mastery, for control, and every motion revealed it. "Step forward, human," Kale finally shouted. "Show us more, remove every limit you have. Let us see the truth." The human paused, meeting Kale's gaze. Then he nodded slightly. Slowly, deliberately, he began to remove the armor restraints that limited his movement. He pulled off the reinforced chest piece, loosened the gauntlets, and unfastened the boots. Each piece clinked softly as it hit the stone floor. Kale held his breath. Every warrior around him did the same. The arena, usually full of noise and movement, fell into a strange silence. The human's true strength was about to be revealed. When the last piece was removed, the human shifted his weight lightly, testing his balance. Then he stepped forward, and the effect was immediate. Every movement was faster, stronger, and more controlled than before. He lifted a massive stone slab, an object Kale had struggled to move even with all his effort. The human's face remained calm, almost serene, as if lifting the stone was as easy as breathing. Kale felt a cold shock run through him. His laughter had turned to disbelief, then to fear. This human's strength was not only physical, it was mental. He controlled his body in ways Kale had never imagined. Even gravity seemed less effective against him, as if the human was in perfect harmony with the world around him. The crowd whispered in awe. Elders in observation pods leaned forward, their multi-limbed hands clutching the edges of their seats. Young warriors stopped, staring in shock. The human's demonstration was not a display of pride or arrogance, it was a display of perfect mastery. Kale's thoughts raced. He had been trained to be the strongest, yet this human proved him wrong in every way. He tried to push himself harder to show that his own strength could compete, but each effort seemed small, clumsy, inadequate. The human's presence was overwhelming, not because he attacked, but because he moved with perfect control. Then the human began a new exercise. He lifted one massive boulder with ease, then another and another, each one heavier than the last. Kale could only watch as the human performed the task with perfect form, each movement calculated and precise. Sweat dripped from Kale's brow, but not from the human. He remained calm, focused, and in complete control. Kale realized something important. This human did not need to show off. He did not need to fight or prove superiority. Strength, Kale thought, could exist quietly without spectacle. The human's mastery of his body and mind was something the Zithar had never been taught. Feeling a mixture of fear and awe, Kale took a deep breath and spoke almost unwillingly. "Teach me," he said. "Show me how you do this. I want to understand." The human paused, considering Kale's words, then he nodded. "Strength is not only physical," he said calmly. "It is control, discipline, and understanding. You must learn patience, balance, and focus. Without them, even the strongest body is weak." Kale lowered his spear. Pride and arrogance had no place here. All that mattered was learning. He watched carefully as the human continued his exercises, each movement more controlled and powerful than the last. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the soft clinks of stones and the human's controlled breaths. Kale tried to imitate some movements, struggling at first, then gradually improving. Every mistake reminded him of how far he had to go, but also inspired him. He could feel his body responding in new ways, muscles learning control rather than brute force. By the end of the day, Kale was exhausted. Sweat soaked his armor, muscles burned, and yet he felt something he had never felt before: respect. He looked at the human, who stood calmly, observing him with quiet patience. The human had not attacked, had not mocked, and had not demanded recognition. And yet he had proven something far greater than victory. He had shown mastery. Kale realized that today was not just a test of strength, it was a lesson. A lesson about humility, control, and the limits of pride. For the first time in his life, he understood that raw power was not enough. Real strength required discipline, patience, and understanding. The young warrior looked around the arena. The other Zithar warriors were silent, watching with awe. Even the elders nodded in quiet approval. Kale felt a strange sense of peace, mixed with the fire of determination. He would train harder, yes, but not for pride or recognition. He would train to master himself, to reach a level of strength that even a human could respect. As the sun set over Zithara Prime, casting long shadows across the arena, Kale stood beside the human. For the first time, the young alien warrior felt that he had met someone who could teach him the true meaning of strength, and he was ready to learn. The next day, Zithara Prime woke under a pale blue sky streaked with violet clouds. The arena was quiet again, but a different energy filled it. The air buzzed with anticipation. News of the human's display of strength had spread quickly among the young warriors. Some came curious, some skeptical, and others, like Kale, were eager to learn. Kale arrived early, pacing along the stone steps of the arena. His mind still replayed the previous day's events. He had tried to imitate the human's movements, and while his body had responded differently than before, he realized just how much he had underestimated control. Strength without control was clumsy. Power without patience was wasted. When the human stepped into the arena this morning, he did so without his plain armor. He wore a simple training uniform, designed only to allow free movement. The human moved with an ease that immediately drew attention. Every step seemed deliberate yet effortless. Every motion carried a sense of power held in check. Kale clenched his fists. He had trained all his life to surpass others in strength and speed, yet here was someone who made raw power look ordinary. His pride screamed, yet a part of him could not help but feel fascinated. The announcer, towering on the balcony above the arena, raised his voice. "Today you will witness mastery, not of weapons or show, but of body and mind. Observe carefully." The young alien warriors watched as the human stepped toward the first set of test objects. Massive stone slabs, larger than any one warrior could lift easily, were lined up along the arena floor. Without hesitation, the human bent, grasped the first slab, and lifted it effortlessly. His arms flexed, yet he did not strain. The stone seemed to float in his hands. Kale's jaw dropped. His hands, which had flexed hundreds of times during his own training, felt suddenly small. He tried to match the human's lifting, but the slabs barely moved. The human's calm expression contrasted sharply with Kale's strained features. It was impossible, Kale thought. How could one being possess such raw strength while remaining so serene? Then the human moved to the mechanical dummies. He did not strike them violently. He did not show off. Instead, he tested his accuracy, his timing, his control. Each dummy toppled in exactly the way he intended. Every strike landed perfectly with minimal effort and maximum efficiency. The young warriors watching gasped. Some whispered, some fell silent in awe. Kale's heartbeat raced. He wanted to laugh, to challenge the human, to prove that aliens were still stronger. But each time he tried, the human's movements reminded him that brute strength alone was useless without discipline. Kale's earlier pride began to crumble. Finally, Kale could not contain his thoughts. "Enough," he shouted. "Show us fully, remove all limitations, let us see your true power." The human paused. He looked calmly at Kale, his eyes steady. Then he nodded and began the process of removing his armor restraints. Unlike the plain armor from yesterday, today the human's training vest and minimal protective gear came off carefully. Each piece dropped lightly to the stone floor. The crowd fell silent. Even the announcer's booming voice quieted in awe. The human was now free of any restraint, moving purely on skill, strength, and control. Kale felt a cold dread grip him. What he had seen before had been impressive, but now anything seemed possible. The human stepped forward, testing his balance, shifting his weight from foot to foot. His movements were faster, smoother, and even more controlled than yesterday. He bent down and lifted a massive stone slab, heavier than anything Kale had tried to move, holding it above his head with a calm, steady expression. Kale could not tear his eyes away. The human's body was flawless in movement. Every muscle worked in perfect harmony. Even the air around him seemed to obey his control. Kale felt a new emotion rise in his chest, not fear of injury, not shame, but awe. He realized that strength could be quiet, measured, and yet overwhelmingly powerful. The human moved next to a set of uneven boulders, shifting them to create a precise formation. Where any alien warrior would have struggled, his motions were exact, effortless, and precise. He lifted, pushed, and repositioned massive stones with the grace of a dancer. Even Kale, who prided himself on agility and power, felt helpless by comparison. The young alien warrior's hands trembled slightly. He had been taught that humans were fragile, slow, and weak. That belief had been reinforced by years of training alongside his fellow warriors. Yet here was a human who could lift and move objects that required teams of Zithar warriors to shift, all with perfect control and without showing fatigue. Kale swallowed hard, struggling to understand. "How?" he muttered under his breath. "How can one be so strong and so calm?" The human looked at him briefly. "Strength is not just what you can lift, Kale," he said in his calm, even voice. "It is control. Power without control is chaos. Discipline without strength is useless. Master both and you will be capable of anything." Kale's chest heaved. Pride and stubbornness battled with the undeniable truth of what he was witnessing. He wanted to argue, to challenge the human, to prove that aliens were still superior. But deep inside, he knew that this human had reached a level far beyond what Kale had imagined. Then the human performed a move that left everyone in the arena gasping. He lifted one of the largest slabs, spun it with perfect precision, and placed it atop a narrow pedestal. The movement required not only strength but balance, timing, and coordination. Even Kale, who had spent years training his body, could not have completed such a task without multiple attempts. The arena erupted in whispers. The elders nodded slowly. The younger warriors exchanged glances, unsure whether to cheer, to bow, or simply remain silent in awe. Kale felt a knot of emotions tighten in his stomach. He had mocked this human, laughed at his plain armor, and yet now he realized that he had no right to doubt him. Kale stepped forward, lowering his spear. "Teach me," he said again, voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "I want to understand. I want to train as you do. Show me how to master strength like this." The human nodded once more, a faint smile on his lips. "Strength is useless without control, Kale. Power without understanding is wasted. Discipline comes first. Master yourself before you seek to master others." Kale bowed slightly, an unfamiliar humility settling over him. He watched as the human continued his demonstrations, moving effortlessly from one task to another. Each motion was precise, controlled, and astonishingly powerful. Every lift, every strike, every movement seemed effortless, yet Kale knew it was the result of discipline, training, and patience. Hours passed in the arena. Kale attempted to replicate some of the movements, and though he improved, it was obvious how much he still lacked. His muscles burned, his breath came fast, and yet he felt exhilaration. For the first time, he understood that learning was as important as strength itself. By the end of the day, Kale was exhausted but inspired. His pride no longer blinded him. He realized that strength alone was not enough to dominate the arena or the galaxy. Mastery required patience, control, and understanding of both body and mind. The human reassembled his armor with quiet efficiency. He did not boast, did not speak of victory, and did not mock. His demonstration was complete not to show dominance but to teach. Kale watched him, absorbing every detail, every lesson, every nuance of his movements. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the arena, Kale finally spoke to the human privately. "I laughed at you," he admitted. "I thought humans were weak. I was wrong. You have shown me what strength really is. How can I learn as you have?" The human smiled faintly. "Observation first, Kale. Practice second. Discipline always. Strength comes from within. Control is the bridge between effort and mastery. If you follow that, you will find your limits and perhaps surpass them." Kale nodded, feeling a quiet determination rising inside him. He would train harder than ever, not for pride, not for recognition, but to reach the level of mastery he had glimpsed today. And he would remember the lesson. Never judge by appearances, never underestimate control, and never ignore the quiet strength within someone else. For the first time, the young alien warrior felt both humbled and inspired. He had laughed at a human, confident in his superiority, but that laughter had ended. The true test of strength had begun, and Kale was ready to face it, with patience, discipline, and a new understanding of what it meant to be truly powerful. The sun climbed higher over Zithra Prime, casting its warm light over the sprawling training arena. Today, the atmosphere was different from previous days. There was no laughter, no boastful shouts, no sense of rivalry. Instead, a quiet tension hung in the air, one born of curiosity, awe, and respect. Young alien warriors, usually full of swagger, stood in small groups, whispering among themselves. All eyes were on the human who had captured their attention so completely. Kale entered the arena early, his armor polished but his movements subdued. Pride no longer led him. It had been replaced by determination and humility. He glanced around, noticing the reactions of his fellow warriors. Some were eager, excited by the opportunity to witness more of the human's abilities. Others seemed unsure, hesitant to compare themselves to someone who had already proven so clearly superior in control and strength. Kale's heart pounded in his chest, not from fear but from anticipation. The human stepped into the arena, as calm and steady as ever. He moved without his usual restraints, wearing only a simple training uniform. His presence alone seemed to command the space. Kale felt the strange mix of awe and inspiration he had experienced the day before. Today, however, he hoped to understand more than just physical strength. The announcer, whose golden scales glimmered in the morning sun, raised his voice above the crowd. "Today, young warriors, you will witness not just feats of strength, but mastery of the mind and body. Observe closely, for the lessons here extend beyond mere power." Kale nodded to himself. He had already learned that the human's strength was extraordinary, but he suspected there was more to learn. Strength, he realized, was meaningless without intelligence, control, and discipline. The human began with simple exercises, but even in these there was a difference. Where Kale and other warriors had often relied on raw power and rapid motion, the human moved with deliberate precision. Every lift, every step, every motion was measured and intentional. He picked up heavy stones, not merely to lift them, but to place them exactly in alignment with one another. The arena seemed almost transformed by his presence. Even the smallest movements carried authority. Kale's eyes narrowed. "How can someone be so calm and so powerful at the same time?" he muttered under his breath. He stepped forward, attempting to follow the human's movements, but immediately felt the difference. Where the human moved with smooth control, Kale's motions were jerky, uneven, and strained. He realized that power without control was like a river without a channel. It could surge wildly, but accomplish nothing of value. The human finished arranging the stones and then moved to another task, balancing. He climbed onto a narrow, unstable platform that tilted under his weight. Kale and the other young warriors gasped. The platform, designed to test balance, wobbled violently, yet the human moved as if on solid ground. He shifted his weight carefully, adjusting his stance minutely, maintaining perfect equilibrium. Kale's jaw tightened. He had trained extensively in balance and agility, yet he could not maintain his footing on the same platform for more than a few seconds. The human's ability to control even the smallest adjustments in his body was extraordinary. Then the human demonstrated something else entirely: strategy. He picked up several training dummies and arranged them in a simulated battle formation. Each dummy was placed with careful thought, designed to test the reactions of multiple opponents simultaneously. Kale watched in disbelief as the human executed a series of simulated maneuvers. He attacked, defended, repositioned, and adjusted without ever striking recklessly. Every movement was calculated, every motion purposeful. Kale realized that the human was showing not just strength or balance, but intelligence in using his abilities. Strength alone could not accomplish what the human had demonstrated. It required foresight, planning, and the ability to adapt instantly. The young alien warriors shifted uncomfortably. They had been taught that raw power was the ultimate measure of skill, yet here was proof that control, intelligence, and discipline could surpass brute force. Kale could see it in their eyes, the realization that they had much to learn. Kale stepped closer to the human, curiosity pushing him forward. "Why do you not fight?" he asked, his voice quiet but carrying a sharp edge of confusion. "Why demonstrate strength without challenging us?" The human looked at him calmly, eyes steady. "True strength is not measured by how many opponents you defeat," he said. "It is measured by how well you control yourself, how well you understand your own abilities, and how well you can adapt to any situation. Victory without understanding is meaningless." Kale felt a shiver of understanding. This was the lesson he had been missing. The arena, the tests, the demonstrations, they were not about dominance. They were about mastery. The human then picked up a massive boulder, heavier than anything Kale had ever lifted, and began a complex series of movements. He lifted, twisted, and balanced the stone, moving it from one side of the arena to the other. Each motion required incredible precision. Even Kale, who had watched the human many times, found it hard to comprehend how one person could control such power so completely. The young warriors watched in awe, some whispering to one another. Kale's mind raced. He had always believed that aliens were the strongest species, trained from birth to dominate. Yet here was a human who had shown that strength alone was insufficient. Control, intelligence, and discipline could surpass raw power, and perhaps even redefine what it meant to be strong. Kale felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. He had mocked this human, laughed at his plain armor, and now he understood the magnitude of his mistake. He lowered his head slightly, feeling humility for the first time in his life. The human continued his demonstration, now showing agility combined with precision. He moved through a series of obstacles, narrow beams, uneven platforms, and shifting stones. Each step was deliberate, each movement calculated. Kale attempted to follow, but his motions were clumsy in comparison. He stumbled, almost falling several times. The human remained steady, calm, and in complete control. Kale realized that the human was teaching not just strength, but the art of movement itself. Every motion, every step, every adjustment mattered. Strength alone could not compensate for mistakes, but mastery of control allowed even the heaviest load to be handled with ease. The sun reached its zenith, and the arena was filled with golden light. The human paused, observing Kale and the other young warriors. He did not boast, he did not gloat, he simply stood, radiating calm confidence. The message was clear: strength was not about proving dominance. It was about understanding oneself and one's abilities. Kale took a deep breath, feeling a new sense of determination. He had been humbled, yes, but he was also inspired. For the first time, he understood that training was not about showing off or defeating others. It was about mastering oneself and through mastery becoming capable of great things. He stepped closer to the human, studying his movements carefully. "I understand now," Kale said quietly. "Strength without control is nothing. Discipline and patience are just as important." "I want to learn, truly learn, not just imitate," the human nodded. "Observation is the first step. Practice is the second. Discipline is always the foundation. Master yourself and the rest will follow." Kale spent the remainder of the day practicing under the human's guidance. He attempted lifts, balance exercises, and precise movements. He failed many times, stumbled often, and felt frustration building, but he also felt progress. Every motion he performed, even imperfectly, brought him closer to understanding the lesson. By evening, Kale was exhausted but enlightened. He could feel the difference in his body, in his mind, and in his approach to strength. He no longer sought to impress or dominate. Instead, he sought understanding, control, and mastery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the arena, Kale reflected on the day's lessons. He had laughed at a human, confident in his superiority, but that laughter had ended. He had witnessed something greater than raw power, something that would shape not only his training but his understanding of strength itself. The young alien warrior approached the human one last time before leaving the arena. "Thank you," Kale said sincerely. "I do not fully understand yet, but I see now the path I must take. I will train with discipline and patience, and one day, perhaps I will reach even a fraction of your mastery." The human placed a hand lightly on Kale's shoulder, a gesture of quiet encouragement. "Every journey begins with observation, Kale. Keep learning, keep practicing, and never underestimate the power of control. Strength is only useful when guided by wisdom." Kale nodded, feeling a mix of humility and determination. He had laughed at a human, thinking himself superior. Now he had learned the true lesson. Strength alone was meaningless without mastery, discipline, and understanding. As he left the arena, Kale glanced back at the human, who was arranging stones with the same calm precision. The lesson was clear, and it would stay with him forever. The young alien warrior had been humbled, yes, but he had also been inspired. And for the first time, he understood that true strength was not measured by brute force, but by the control one had over oneself, and the wisdom to use that strength wisely. The stars would shine over Zithra Prime that night, but Kale's mind was already reaching far beyond them. He had glimpsed the potential of humans, a species long underestimated, and he knew that one day this understanding would change the way his people viewed strength, power, and mastery forever. The sun rose over Zithra Prime, casting a soft gold light across the training arena. Today was different from all the days before. The air was quiet, filled with anticipation. Word of the humans' displays of strength and mastery had spread across the academy, reaching every corner of the planet. Young alien warriors who had once mocked the human now watched with a mixture of awe and respect. Even Kale, the proud young warrior who had laughed at the human's plain armor, felt the weight of something greater than pride pressing on his shoulders. Kale entered the arena early, his armor polished but lighter in spirit. Pride had been replaced by curiosity and determination. Today, he wanted not only to observe but to understand fully. He wanted to learn how the human could move with such controlled strength and calm. The human stepped into the arena without any heavy restraints, wearing only a simple training uniform. His movements were effortless, precise, and confident. Each step seemed to carry purpose. Each motion, whether small or large, displayed control. Kale's heartbeat quickened as he observed. He had trained his entire life, yet the human made mastery look natural, almost easy. The announcer's voice echoed across the arena. Today, young warriors, witness not just strength, but mastery of body, mind, and spirit. Observe carefully, for what you see may change your understanding of true power. Kale nodded to himself. He had already seen glimpses of this mastery, but today he hoped to grasp the full lesson. His fellow young warriors gathered around, some standing nervously, some trying to hide their fascination. All eyes were on the human. The human began with a series of exercises, lifting massive stones, moving them with careful precision, and arranging them in perfect formations. Each motion was deliberate, controlled, and incredibly powerful. Kale tried to imitate the movements but quickly realized how far he still was from such mastery. His body was strong, but it lacked control. His movements were clumsy, unbalanced, and impatient. Kale swallowed, feeling frustration and determination mix in equal measure. "I cannot match him yet," he muttered under his breath. "But I will learn, I have to learn." The human then moved to a set of unstable platforms and beams designed to test balance, agility, and coordination. The platforms swayed and shifted beneath his weight, yet he moved across them with perfect balance, never faltering, never hesitating. Each step was precise, controlled, and confident. Kale attempted the same path, and within moments he stumbled, barely keeping his footing. The difference was clear, undeniable, and humbling. Kale's pride trembled. He had trained his entire life to be the best warrior, yet here was a human who made his years of preparation look incomplete. The lesson was clear. Strength alone was not enough. Mastery required control, patience, and understanding of both body and mind. The human paused and looked at Kale. "Strength without control is meaningless," he said calmly. "Discipline without strength is useless. Master both, and you will achieve greatness. This is the lesson you must carry forward." Kale's chest heaved as he absorbed the words. They were simple, yet profound. He had always believed that victory came from raw power, from speed, from aggression. But now he understood that true mastery demanded far more. It demanded patience, understanding, and the ability to control oneself completely. The human then performed something extraordinary. He lifted several massive boulders, each larger than any Kale had attempted, and arranged them in a complex formation. Then, without pause, he climbed the unstable platforms, adjusted his balance perfectly, and moved the boulders into a new, even more intricate pattern. Every motion was flawless. Every adjustment was precise. The audience watched in stunned silence. Kale felt a mixture of awe and humility. He realized that strength without wisdom could accomplish little, but strength guided by discipline and understanding could achieve what once seemed impossible. As the human continued his display, Kale stepped forward. "Teach me," he said quietly yet with conviction. "I want to learn everything. I want to understand how you move, how you control, how you master strength." The human nodded once, a faint smile on his lips. "Observation is the first step. Practice is the second. Discipline is always the foundation. If you master yourself, Kale, you can master anything you attempt." Kale spent the next hours training under the human's guidance. He lifted, balanced, and moved objects with careful attention. His movements were awkward at first, but gradually he improved. Each motion became smoother, each adjustment more controlled. The human observed silently, offering guidance only when necessary. Every word, every gesture was a lesson in precision and patience. By midday, Kale was exhausted but exhilarated. His body burned from effort, but his mind was alive with understanding. He had laughed at this human once, certain of his superiority. Now he felt something far more valuable: respect. Other young warriors approached, watching Kale's attempts to mimic the human's techniques. Some joined, trying to learn as he did. The arena, once a place of competition and mockery, had become a place of learning, observation, and growth. Kale realized that this was the true lesson. Mastery could inspire others, and humility could teach more than arrogance ever could. The human then demonstrated one final feat. He lifted the heaviest boulder in the arena, spinning it with perfect control and placing it atop a narrow pedestal. The movement required balance, strength, intelligence, and precision all at once. The spectators gasped. Kale's heart pounded. He had seen many impressive displays, but this one left him speechless. "Observe carefully," the human said. "Every action, every adjustment, every motion matters. Strength without control is wasted. Discipline without application is meaningless. Master yourself and you can achieve the impossible." Kale nodded, understanding more than ever. The lesson was clear. True strength was not just physical. It was control, discipline, intelligence, and patience combined. It was mastery over one's own body, mind, and actions. By evening, Kale felt a sense of calm determination he had never known. He had laughed at a human, certain of his superiority, and yet he had been humbled, not defeated, but taught. The lesson was more valuable than any victory in the arena. Kale approached the human one last time before leaving. "I understand now," he said sincerely. "I laughed, I mocked, but I see the truth. Strength is more than power. It is discipline, control, and understanding. I will train harder than ever, and I will master myself." The human placed a hand lightly on Kale's shoulder. "Every journey begins with observation, Kale. Keep learning, keep practicing, and never forget the importance of control. Strength guided by wisdom will take you farther than brute force ever could." Kale nodded, feeling a mix of humility, determination, and gratitude. For the first time, he realized that laughter, arrogance, and pride were meaningless compared to true understanding and mastery. As he left the arena, Kale looked back at the human, who continued to move with calm precision, arranging stones and practicing his balance. The young alien warrior understood that this human had changed not just his perception of strength, but the future of all young warriors who had witnessed his mastery. Word of the day's events spread quickly. The story of the human's demonstration traveled across Zithara Prime. Young warriors who had once mocked humans now spoke in whispers of respect. Elders nodded in quiet approval, recognizing the rare opportunity to observe such mastery. Kale, however, remained focused on his own path. He knew that he had only begun to understand and that the real work, the work of mastering himself, was just beginning. That night under the starlit sky, Kale trained alone. He moved with careful attention, each motion deliberate, each adjustment thoughtful. He lifted, balanced, and controlled his movements with increasing precision. The lessons of the human echoed in his mind. Strength without control is nothing. Discipline without application is meaningless, and mastery is achieved only through patience, practice, and understanding. Kale felt a fire of determination inside him. He had laughed, mocked, and underestimated the human, but now he understood the true measure of power. It was not in flashy armor, not in brute force, and not in victories won through aggression. It was in control, discipline, patience, and understanding. As the stars shone over Zithara Prime, Kale looked to the future with a sense of purpose. The human had taught him more than strength. He had taught him humility, discipline, and the true meaning of mastery. Kale knew that he would carry these lessons forever, shaping not only his own future, but the future of every young warrior who trained alongside him. The human's quiet demonstration had changed everything. Laughter had turned to awe, pride to respect, and mockery to understanding. Kale had stopped laughing, but he had begun learning. And in that learning, he had discovered a path that no young warrior had ever walked before. A path toward true mastery, strength guided by wisdom, and the limitless potential that comes from understanding oneself. As the arena gates closed for the night, Kale took one last look at the human. The quiet warrior had left an impression that could never be erased. Kale knew that one day he would reach a level of mastery that others would whisper about. And when that day came, he would remember the lesson of the human. Strength is not what you wear, it is what you control, and the greatest power lies in mastering yourself.